Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. I'm Nicholas Lee, and today I'm joined by Eddie Pesos. He is a multidisciplinary artist who dabbles in a multitude of different mediums, but is most known for his work as a creative force in music. He's been featured on platforms like Complex, MTV Philippines, and CBCQ. You may know him as the artist formerly known as Lyrique. Eddie, thank you so much for being here, bro.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure. The introduction caught me off guard a bit. So I'm like, oh, yeah. But no, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate, even when I talked to you a while back at Socality House, I wasn't sure that you knew me from rapping before. And honestly, that experience or that interaction just gave me a different light on how I saw myself as rapping. It's like, okay, certain people will remember you depending on how you impact them with your art or how you create. Right. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me, man.
Honestly, this is a special episode for me just because obviously it's a brand new set. First episode with the brand new set. It's the Shingles comeback. So, man, I guess I just want to address that straight off top because I think that's a lot of people who have been following you for a while. They'd be curious about that, right? Yeah. For a lot of people who accomplish as much as you did under that Lyrique moniker, they'd be a little hesitant to change their name. So what was that motivation for you? What made you want to kind of shift into Eddie Pesos as you're known now?
Yeah, I know that's a great question, and I've been asked that a few times, and truthfully, I've tried to avoid answering it because number one, I never really knew why. But I guess to really dissect the process or how that whole ordeal came about, Lyrique came from a time where, as a lot of art, I find, and I'm not really that familiar with how a lot of artists' processes are. I'm familiar with their work, but I'm not the type of artist who sometimes digs into their history or their bio on how they started. I just sometimes find out about it, say NWA. I found out more about how they started out of that movie. Right. I'm not the type to really dig down into it. But back to the question, Lyrique started from a time where I was really coming from a lot of struggles, and I was never really good with monikers, even growing up younger in the early 90s, early 2000s, coming up with email addresses or gamer tags. I always struggled with having a nickname. But then at the time when Lyrique started, Logic was kind of popping off with his whole Young Sinatra project off SoundCloud, and I was like, Logic, Lyrique. And I kind of wanted to honor my family last name Q, and it's so I kind of incorporated that there with Lyrique instead of with just the C, so it's not as, I don't know, not as easy that I have 10 other lyrics and but there are other people who have that with a QE in the end. But anyway, the process of that was it started off with an intent of release where truthfully even to today I consider the only probably real piece of music that as a Lyrique I created was that song Escape, because it came from a time of adversity. Everything else honestly was an ego game. Going back to our conversation with Eckhart Tolle, I think knowing myself more, because at the time when Lyrique came out, I didn't really take time to do self-care. The process of it was just man, I'm new to Calgary, I'm new to Canada, and I think I could be good with this music stuff, so let's try to make something out of it. And then it started something so pure that even though how hard you try to tell yourself that, yeah, I'm going to keep being pure, I'm going to keep being real to myself, you lose track of that. Your ego would distract you from that. So I think really letting go of something that doesn't necessarily work for you, that was the biggest let go for me of Lyrique. I've heard certain acquaintances, certain friends saying, oh yeah, but you've had this publicity here, this publicity there. Publicity is great, not gonna lie. Honestly, it's mainly great for your ego. Right. But those things pass. I'm willing to put money on it, out of 20, 50 people, there's only going to be at least one or two who remember you were in that, just for the sake of the name of the brand, but not you per se. That, yes, you were in the eye of this big company that featured you, but what did it really do for you? You know, did it?
Right.
Some people, yeah, they go in complex and it amplifies their career and stuff. But for me, I used it in. I think having those experiences was great, and I'm really grateful for them. But as looking at myself interpersonal, that it triggered a lot in my ego that I was being something I never wanted to be when I started Lyrique.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess letting go really of something that doesn't really work for you anymore. And I've heard countless times that, yeah, it's hard to start. And it is from a perspective. It's like you lose followers. People tend to question it. It affects your mental. For me, it was a huge mental thing.
Right.
And I was like, a lot of anxiety mid-pandemic. I was like, am I really about this? Start listening to my old songs and I'm like, oh, then you realize you're not really that good. But then you start to second guess yourself. And then the answer is you're not really that good because you lose the intent. Everything should be about intent. So I was just like, one day just ripped the Band-Aid off, deleted everything, took all the music down, went off the grid for a bit. And I'm like, hey, like a lot of people call me Eddie. That was never really my nickname. It was only here.
Right.
And I was like, okay, Eddie Pesos. Art will always be a part of me. But I feel like you have a dream sometimes that you really forcing it, then actually allowing it to happen are two different things in the process of it.
Right.
Forcing it will get you to a certain point, the MTVs, the complexes, while allowing something to naturally happen with intent will give you more satisfaction. So I just chose that route than choosing the route of just satisfying a part of me, which is my ego, then actually just like realigning myself with what I really want, which is privacy. Privacy is a luxury. Peace of mind that I'm creating something that I don't second guess. If others don't like it, that's okay. But if you believe in a concept enough that it gives you peace, that's what I chose. So honestly, man, letting go. Long answer, but letting go.
No, man, I love that. And I love being like that you dug into that because, you know, I like to prepare and know more about my guests so I can ask more, thoughtful questions. And that was definitely like what I wondered, but I can relate so much to that answer because even for myself in my story, like, you know, for people who've known me for a long time, like I did covers on YouTube and there was a moment where, I got some notoriety. I was like, if you guys know who Tim Chung Thransu is or Passion or Jenny Suk and those people, like I had the chance to perform with them multiple times.
Crazy. Jeremy Passion. I love that guy.
Man, he's a freaking legend. He's an OG legend of the game, right? And, you know, I can relate to that so much because it came from a place that was so pure for me, like literally just, like you said, you know, it's a form of release for me. Like it came from the purest place, like me and an acoustic guitar in a room. And then once the notoriety comes up, once the subscriber count goes up, then you begin to like reevaluate yourself. You begin to look at yourself through a different lens, maybe try to look at yourself through the lens that other people see you. And you can see that, you know, it doesn't match up. And then so you begin to judge yourself. You're like, oh man, I'm not what people think I am. Or at least what this person says I am. And when people approach me, they're like, oh, yo, how's your music? Oh man, how was that performance? How was this and how was that? And it's like, and then just like you said, man, my intent changed. My intent changed as well to be like, yeah, I'm chasing subscribers now. So now I'm covering Justin Bieber and now I'm covering these people that I don't even like. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, man, that intention is so important and the ability to let go of an identity that bolsters your ego takes so much, man. Like this is a conversation I have with so many people where it's like we create these identities for ourselves. Sometimes they're masked to protect us from the outer world and like to let go of that, to pursue something that's truly for you, whether that's privacy or peace or whatever thing that you value is like incredibly brave, man. And I think that, you know, that's an amazing story to share because people listening to this who can relate to that, I hope that they can also find the bravery to let go of identities or people or anything that is no longer serving them and is no longer like being a positive thing in their life. So that's amazing, man. I appreciate that perspective.
Thank you, man. No, thank you. And no, thanks for sharing that. Like I had a lot of like quote unquote aha moments when you were saying that, oh, letting go of that, because I've been playing a lot of like crossword games lately on my phone just to like keep me sharp. And I may be botching this, but I just found out the other day that alter ego is a Latin word for identity. So you're saying tapping into multiple identities. It's like, yeah, definitely it's an alter ego. It's like you're Bruce Wayne and you're like Batman's and Clark Kent's, but there's always bound to be, anything in life, pros and cons. It's just, but you're in charge of creating those pros and cons, right? So,
100%.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And like I said, I like to do a little bit of research on people before they come on, and like you grew up in the Philippines, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So like for me, I'm a son of immigrants, and I got the chance to visit Vietnam and see my parents' hometown and live in a house in the same village like that, my parents would have grown up in, and man, I'm always like so enamored by like how different, like for my parents at least, it's like you live two completely different lives. Like your life over there is like a whole nother life, and then this life over here is a whole nother life within one lifetime. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm just curious about that experience for you, man. Like, can you just tell me more about what life was like there for you and how that impacted you as a person?
For sure, man. Like I think, and I sometimes tap into that. Like the thing with me is like I have two addresses. Not necessarily like Philippines in here per se. I live here full time. I love my life here.
Right.
But one address is here. My one address is my head. I live in my head a lot, which is something I should get out of. But I tap into that a lot, thinking of like how it was growing up and how I am now. Then I kind of think of the future and how am I going to share that message to one day when I have kids, or to, just to someone to relate to. Like one day there may be, who knows, this other Filipino kid who moved here. So I moved here on my own when I was 22, turning 23. I'm 30 now, so it's been a while. It doesn't show. That's a benefit of having the Asian genes. I guess it's very different. There are lots of times, especially when I was starting out, going back to the Lyrique chapter, a lot of that was influenced by a lot of the angst I had growing up back home. I guess now I look at it as a blessing that I experienced two types of lives back home, where I grew up and I never needed for anything. I was provided by my parents, who did a great job, and I still commend them for doing a good job. And then, like as my grandma would always say, sometimes life is like a wheel of luck. Sometimes that wheel could end up stopping, and where it stops, you just have to roll with it until it rolls again to where it needs to be. And like I grew up not wanting for nothing, and I experienced also a life of struggle there, where I saw my parents struggled on providing for my family, but they did their best, and I'm really grateful for that. Back home, I was always cornered, I guess. I was never really social. I was always at home. My sister would always do this extracurricular activities, which I highly encourage. Like, as a kid, I'll obviously support what your kid would want to do, but have them go out and do things as much as they can. But my mom just like, she understood me. She got me that I was always like an introvert and just wanted to be at home. Having experienced all those, a life of like where everything is provided for you, and having to experience a life of like, sometimes you're worried on what to do next, and then moving to a new country where you didn't know what to do. It's as if you're forced to grow up fast, but sometimes it's not really growing up fast. I used to always say that, when I moved here when I was 22, I grew up fast. But I kind of take that back now, because I'm like, I wasn't growing up fast. It was just something I wasn't used to. And I was never used to being uncomfortable, because I was always sheltered. I was always, even on weekends, I was the kid who would always just stay home, play in like my little basketball court, watch like movies, play PlayStation, just hang out on my own. And just to have that experience of being sheltered by my parents, which, wasn't necessarily sheltering, but they just let me do my own thing. And coming here, I was just like, okay, this is tough. Like I'm not used to this, but it's a different experience per se. Like I can't attest to how other immigrants are when they move here with their families. I know that's a different struggle as well. Right. And I just had to take a different route in that struggle path, because it's hard, man. Like funny enough, I was watching this thing from Manila Grey the other day on their BTS video, and I guess Nico from Manila Grey was the one who said that being an immigrant is hard because it's like all the cards are against you, and it is. I guess that's what also drove me to doing the whole Lyrique thing and actually tapping into my creativity a lot. But growing up in the Philippines, it was really hard. One thing I'm really grateful for is moving here. As much as Calgary is, I know that there's always that debate that it's always supportive of country music and folk music,
right,
which it is, as opposed to like the R&Bs and the urban music. It's growing. Things take time.
100%.
But I've gotten to have more support here in the arts than back home, where back home you look back at it, oh yeah, that's like exactly what I saw in the movie where this guy would laugh at you for rapping or wanting to do that.
Right.
And then back home, you're just like, I don't know, you're always so fascinated by how people live in America or Canada. But then you get here and you're like, yeah, it's more comfortable, but people still deal with their own demons, you know?
100%.
A different environment, like new levels, new devils, right? So growing up in the Philippines has given me, honestly, it gave me, right now, at the time I couldn't say it equipped me, but now I look back and I'm like, okay, it equips me with the knowledge of when it's my turn to raise a kid and pass things on, or to, look back at where I am now to where I was before. It gives me that moment of appreciation for the growth and moment of appreciation for having, parents that always provided, even though when things really seemed hard. Like, I'm at a point right now in my life where I understand that, okay, that was tough. If I was in their position then and I had to do these things, that's tough. Whereas back then I always like tried to contest it. Like, oh, all the whys. Instead of now it's like, oh, what did that teach me? What did that serve as a purpose in my process? So yeah, I can't really expound much on that. Like, truthfully, sometimes I always say, even to my mom, that if I could just put all my memories and experiences in a USB and pass it to you, that you can just plug in somewhere so you can understand it.
Right.
It's that type of vibe where sometimes you just have to live it to understand it. Words cannot express it.
100%.
But I guess to summarize that up, it's just, I'm grateful for it. And it's a lot of lessons learned. I always used to think that, I was a loser with these aspects. But I'm like, no, never. It's true, as cliche as it may sound, you never really lose. You just learn,
100%. 100%. I believe that wholeheartedly, bro. And like, there's just so much in there that I feel like is so powerful, to be honest. Like, even you said yourself, like, the struggle was actually a catalyst for you to create the art that you're creating now. Like, what you're doing now is based on a quote unquote hard or bad thing, you know what I'm saying? And so like, it reminds me of this Chinese proverb that my girl actually talked to me about the other day, where it's like, I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't know it exactly, but it's like, all of these events would happen to this farmer. Either they'd be like, oh, your crops are growing so big, that's awesome. And he's like, maybe. It's like, oh, like all your things are dead. Like, I'm so sorry about that. That's so awful. And he's like, maybe. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we can have our own judgments on what life is showing us, but we have no idea how that pans out. Like, these are these events that could trigger all these different things. Like, even for me, recently going through shingles, like, I can say a bunch of different stuff. Like, at the time, I'm like, man, this is the worst thing that's ever freaking happened to me, bro. Like, I can't move, I can't do anything. Like, it's like in my eye, I'm super scared. But ultimately, like, there's just so much positivity that came from that experience, so much learning, and so I can really relate to your story, man. And like, even another thing you said in there, which was like, you have your own set of problems when you're living in the Philippines. And, sometimes, at least for me, when I moved away from Calgary, I thought my problems would go away when I moved. But you're really just presented with a different set of problems, you know what I mean? And, but again, those problems could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at them. So yeah, man, definitely I can like relate to you on the fact that your hard times will always give you perspective and gratitude for the times that you're in now. And we really don't know how things are. So it's kind of best to just trust in the process and not judge the things we're going through in the moment. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I think big part in the process is that I've been learning honestly in just the last 3 weeks is really being gentle with yourself.
Yes.
Like I asked my therapist, was like, she had asked me this question I've never asked myself, where it's like, are you gentle with yourself? And I was like, yeah, well, I work out and I do this and I do that. It's like, no, are you gentle with yourself? And I was like, yeah, I do this. No, but how are you gentle with yourself? And I find that I never realized it, because I thought being a critic was like, oh, like, in music, oh no, this is too loud. But I never realized how hard I was on myself. Like, I think one of the biggest struggles that people deal with on the low that no one really talks about, that it's only scary because you don't talk about it, is the things that you wish you could have done, the things you regret, and the things that you're guilty of doing, especially if you care enough. I've always had like a people-pleasing personality, but then I'm realizing now that no, can't please everyone. That's just how it rolls. But like, I don't know, just not being gentle with yourself is detrimental to the process. Like, I think you need to realize that, man, that was me. I can't turn back time anymore and correct that. But I can do is just be the better version of myself. Now, I can't also rush and wait for the next opportunity to do things right, because you can never correct something. That's just not how life works. Like, life's not owed to repeat scenarios for you to rectify. Like, I think life is built for you to learn, and then when the opportunity presents itself, it'll just be like a light bulb. It's like, okay, I've been here before, and I know what to do with it now. And just really being gentle with yourself is so detrimental to a lot of things. For me, per se, I found that I'm always gentle with friends and people who I meet, but not to myself. And I think that's one thing that people should always try to be mindful of. It's difficult, but be like, hey, that's done. You can't do anything about that, but you did good. You did your best in the moment. You operated to your capacity at the moment. But yeah.
100%, bro. And I love that so much, because like, that's such a part of my journey as well, man. Like, I am so hard on myself, dude. Like, and I think that's like such a common thing for everyone. I think everyone is kind of softer with their friends or the people that they love than they are with their own selves. You know what I mean? And a kind of light switch that happened for me recently was like looking at myself, like my true essence of who I am as my inner child. And now I am like, I'm like the guardian of my inner child. Like, I'm the parent of my inner child now. And so, like, when you're looking at your child or your future child or whatever that is, like, if they make a mistake, are you going to be like, man, you suck, dude, you better fucking get back in the gym. You better go do this. Man, like, you fucked up on that line. Like, dude, you better fucking study your shit. Like, maybe you might. Maybe there's some dads that are like that, you know what I'm saying? But that's not going to help your inner child grow. That's not going to help that child grow and develop, you know what I mean? So I think that's a great insight, man. Like, we should all be more gentle with ourselves. And it reminds me back to what you said about like growing up fast. Yeah. And like, this is my experience, but like, for me, I also felt like I grew up fast too. And I kind of forced myself to do that for not being gentle with myself, and just like you said, it wasn't really growing up fast. It's really just creating a suit of armor that's going to protect you from the things that hurt you when you couldn't protect yourself, when you were just a kid, when you were a vulnerable little kid who couldn't do anything. Like, what is the identity, the alter ego that I'm going to create? What is my Superman? What is my Batman? To protect my, like, Clark Kent, who I really am in the inside, the nerdy dude with the glasses. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, man, that's powerful, dude, for me. And another thing you said in there is, like, you can't change the past. No. And, like, for me, the thing is, my tool for mitigating regret in life is just to always do my best. Just like you said, like, all you can do is your best. And, like, even if you're the hardest person on yourself, if you do your best, like, how can you do better than your best? Like, that is the most, like, unrealistic thing to ask of anyone. And yourself. Like, you did your best, you put it all in there, whatever the outcome is the outcome. You cannot control that. You know what I'm saying? So
100%, man.
I appreciate you sharing that, man. That's awesome.
No, man. And you do your best. Like, to the best of your capability. At least it's like always, you know. I don't know if like this one movie, The Green Book. Really recommend people watching if you haven't already. Mahershala Ali, and I forget the guy who played Aragorn in Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
I forget his actual name, but yeah, it was based on on a true story. And this guy was a jazz pianist, and there's a scene when they're driving through Kentucky, and this time where it's like racial tension was really high, and this guy was like, people are listening to his record, and obviously the first thing they think is, oh, he's Caucasian, or he but he's this amazing jazz pianist, or like not even jazz, like just like I can't explain it. And reading more about it, that it was a true story, that was like, that's crazy. But there's a part in the scene in this movie that I really appreciated, where this guy, who was a mafia guy in New York, used to be like a mafia collector guy, and he just hired him. I need you to be my driver and to be my bodyguard when I go to the South. And sure, they were like, and this guy loves to eat, man. Like in the movie, it was so funny. The driver or the bodyguard, he just like would buy a whole pizza and just like roll it up like a burrito and eat it. And then they ended up on the very first KFC, because this was like set in the olden times.
Okay.
So he buys a bucket, and then the artist, I'm blanking out on his name, but the movie's called The Green Book. And he was saying, Tony, why do you eat? Why do you always eat like that? And then as he was holding up the drumstick, he was saying, well, you know, one thing my dad taught me in life is always do your best. If you're eating, eat like it's your last meal. If you're performing, play it like it's your last show. And if you're loving, love it like you're not here tomorrow. And just do your best, because truthfully, that's what matters, these moments. Tomorrow is never promised. There was never written that tomorrow was promised. That's why one thing I've been learning too is, you know, gratitude really for the days that you have, the things that you currently have. It's so easy to type down or tweet saying that, oh, remember the things you used to pray for and you have now, but to actually feel that is one of the most difficult things. But if you tap into that, there's no denying how you can tap into your best right now. The problem is we always think of how we're going to be better tomorrow, when that's not guaranteed. It's guaranteed on paper, on a calendar, but biologically it's never guaranteed, you know? So, yeah.
Dude, that's real. That's real shit right there. Yeah, and like that one little detail, you know, like you can be in affirmations and stuff like that, and you can say the words, but when you feel something, like you said, to really feel that gratitude, that feeling is the frequency that you radiate. Because you can be like, you can put yourself in the mirror and be like, you're beautiful, you're awesome. But if you like don't believe that and you don't feel that, you're not resonating on that frequency. And so you're not going to be attracting that same energy to you. You're still attracting that same energy. So like, yeah, that is the hardest thing to do, man. But again, it's like, for me, it's always just do your best.
Yeah.
You can't unlock that feeling right now in its most, ideal form. It's okay. Do your best. Like if it starts off just like faking it, do that, man. That's the best you can do right now, and then build from that. Build from the best thing you can do. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's awesome, man. Like,
oh man, thank you.
Yeah, and you know, you touched on this a little bit, but you know, I read in an article that you were featured in that, like, you know, it was like 6 years into your time here in Canada before like things really started looking up for you. You know what I mean? And that's something that I try to tell people all the time. It's like, you know what? You can have a bad day. You can have a bad month. You can have a bad year.
Yeah.
But that's not a bad life, man. Like you can still keep on going in that. And so like, I'm wondering if you have any like tools or practices or advice for someone who might be going through life right now. And it's like been a long time. It's been freaking hard for them. You know what I'm saying? And like, there's like, when does it get to the good part? You know what I mean? Like what could you say to people like that who were in a similar position as you or who are currently that? Like what tools do you do to tackle the harder times in life?
Yeah, man. I'm still learning that, because the thing is, you never really like, it's like this. It's like, this is like my windshield, and then say bring out my phone. This is like my rear view mirror. A lot of people are, when you drive, you should be like this, right?
Right.
And then just keep looking back. A lot of people are like this. And that's why it builds up so much anxiety and so much, I find, so much stress. Because you're scared that something bad may happen, that you're not going to get to where you want to be. And you're scared because all you're focused on is the things that's already happened instead of the things that is going to happen. There may be traffic along the way, but really, what's the worst part in waiting? Maybe an hour, 2 hours. Yeah, that's a dreadful wait. But at least they know there's an ending, as opposed to really looking. And it's just this was something that was taught to me that I never really realized. That I was like, yeah, that's true. It's like driving. Instead of focusing where you need to go or how you are going to get there, we are always so fixated, myself included, on what's behind us. But really, life is just really like, and I don't know this. I'm still living, I'm still living. I would probably never know this even until if I was 80, if I'm blessed to reach that age. No one really knows. You just get better at it. It's like the first time you ever went to the gym. You're like starting with like the small dumbbells, but then now you're like at the bigger ones, and you don't realize that it's a process, that sometimes you have to start small in order to be big. And it goes the same with life and driving. It's like you can't fixate on the rear view. You can check back at it just for safety, safety check, but or shoulder checks, but you have to always be fixated on where you're going. You can't fixate on what's already behind you, because that's behind you for a reason. And then, like in driving, sometimes what's behind you is always meant to pass you, right? They're either meant to go over you or turn around, but you're in your own car. You have to you're in control of that. You're in control of where you need to go, where you need to be. And that's something I'm still figuring out. Those times back then, yeah, they weren't easy. And I played a victim role for years, thinking that it wasn't pleasant, those things. And the one thing I think some people should do is not justify why the bad things happened. I used to always, when I was asked, when I would share my experiences on things that happened, why did this person do this to you? And I would always say that, it's because they had this type of problem or they were dealing with this. And I find that what works for me is like, don't say that. Don't justify it for them. Just say, yep, that wasn't cool. But it's done. Don't also go into the mindset of bashing it that, no, that's not cool. That's not cool.
Right.
Like, just say, that's not cool, but it's done. It's like, it's a bird, right? You can't, like, when a bird flies by us and they, like, shit on us and stuff. You can't do anything. You can't jump up to the bird and catch it and just, like, do crap to it. Just, like, wipe it off. But the more you let that in your head, it's like building a nest around you, right? So it's like you just get better at it, I guess, with life. Like, new levels and new devils always. It doesn't get easier. Life doesn't get easier. You just get used to certain things. There's just certain problems that you're used to that you know how to cope with, and there are going to be new ones that are going to overwhelm you, and they may overwhelm you for years. But it's that process, right? That you know that you just need to do it. That you're just looking forward. That okay, not every road is a smooth road. Going back to the driving context of it, not every road is a smooth road. Sometimes you have to travel through rough roads that may burst your tire, but you just got to fix it, get it done, or you're just going to be stuck there. You can't be stuck somewhere, and you can't be stuck looking at the rear view. The rear view is there for a reason. Like, you know how when you do those long drives, even from, say, Calgary to, I lived in Fort McMurray for a bit, and one thing I noticed is the traffic just gets lesser and lesser the more you're in these places where it's like full of like farms and just like trees and stuff.
Right.
Because there's lesser noise in places of peace, really.
Right.
So you keep that's why you keep chasing. You are in control of your destination. You are in control of where you go. You are not in control of how long you are going to go, because that's not promised. But you just have to embrace it where you're at right now on the drive. There's no guarantee. Like, my sister even sent this like Billy Joel song to me a while back, Vienna. And the song was just like about slow down. It was just saying that foolish child, slow down, you foolish child. And then the end of it is Vienna waits for you, meaning you know, you see those videos of Vienna where like dolphins are swimming in the canal and like the view is beautiful.
Yeah.
The destination always waits for you. Vienna will not shift. Vienna will not be in Antarctica tomorrow because the world doesn't shift. The world revolves, but places stay the same. But Vienna waits for you. You know, the destination will always wait for you. And you don't know when you've already reached a destination until you have. But right now, that's not your concern. Your concern right now is to get there as safe as you can and as not even as quick as you can at your own pace.
Yes.
You drive fast, you're bound to win a stupid prize. With physically or your car or whatever, you know. But you know, drive at your own pace. Life is full of crossroads. You know, every day, every minute, you're faced with a crossroad, and that crossroad is that decision on what to do. But whatever you do, just make sure you do it with intent and it's aligned to your principle. There are decisions that may haunt you and regret, but that's in your rear view. Just got to keep going, you know. Just gotta keep going. And this is all easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. I'm no expert in life.
Right, 100%.
But yeah, one thing the best thing I could say is stop paying attention to your rear view and start paying attention of what's really in front of you, regardless if it's traffic, because you know traffic is always bound to end. Either you get out of your car and you walk there, or you just wait. You know.
100%.
Yeah.
Man, I love that. That's actually a really great perspective. And like, you know, yeah, there's gonna be traffic. There's an aspect of life, if you want to judge them as hard times or bad times, that you have to accept. Like if you're gonna be driving, like if we're gonna be participating in this experience called life, then we have to accept that there's hard times, right? Like, and yeah, we all get better at doing it. Like, you know, none of us are experts in life, and you know that's why I call this podcast The Process. You know what I mean? Like we're all in process. No one's at the end destination. Even if you are, like you're saying, even at 80, I don't even know if I'm going to have anything figured out at 80. You know what I'm saying? There's still going to be things that I'm going to be growing and learning and changing. You know what I'm saying? And like for me, the intention of this podcast is like to help me 5 years ago. Somebody who's in traffic, like behind, like 5 cars behind me. And he's like texting me like, yo, man, what happened when you were back here? Like that. Like this happened. This is how I dealt with it. But again, I don't know anything either, bro. We're all just trying to figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I appreciate the perspective because like that actually really helps me a lot. Like, and there's a lot of things that you touched on there. Like, you know, new levels, new devils. You know what I'm saying? Like I always compare life to a video game or a simulation or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, in life, if you're facing, like, think about a video game. If you're playing a video game and then the monsters get harder and stronger, that means you're going in the right direction. You're going in the wrong direction in a video game. You're just like, hey, where's all the enemies, dude?
Yeah. It gets boring.
Exactly,
right?
dude. It gets boring. And like, exactly, like the story of your life, if we can use that car analogy, like, what if your story of your life is like, yeah, I drove there and there was no traffic. It was real nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, Grandpa? Yeah. Like this, the richness of our lives and this richness of stories comes from adversity.
Yeah.
And like I always say this, like we are just souls having a human experience, and like to create a story with our lives, to have these experiences, and like my favorite stories at least are ones where the hero like beats the most adversity. You know what I mean? And that's another thing you said in there, like we're like you used to live in a victim mentality, and I think a lot of people do. I have myself. You know, but when you can shift that to you're the hero and these enemies are here to test you and help you level up, and when you level up, you're gonna see those new enemies, and enemies and hardships and struggles are just a part of life that we have to accept.
Yeah.
Then that's when you can actually start enjoying this thing and like appreciate it and have gratitude and be resonating on that frequency to be able to receive the gifts that you're supposed to receive. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So yeah, that's fucking awesome, man. And like, even with like what you said, like you might not be going as fast as you want to go, but again, like fast is so relative. Like you're only going to think that you're moving slowly if you're looking at the guy in the car next to you and be like, how fast is that guy going?
Exactly.
That guy's going so fast compared to me. But like, again, like you said, we're on our own journey. We're in our own car. That is where we have our power.
Yeah.
So when we just stick to our story, there is no fast and there is no slow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's your biggest, like going back to like even loving yourself and being gentle with yourself. Competing with yourself is healthy. and you have to mix that with being gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be your biggest villain. Sometimes you have to be, especially like we're complex beings that we're composed of emotions, egos, we're vulnerable, and we fight that vulnerability that causes that. Tension will never occur unless you create it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why if you fight vulnerability, you're creating your own tension. Right. If you're fighting the opportunity to be anxious, going back to even anxiety, people always fight anxiety by like, a substance, drinking. And it's difficult because sometimes those are really the means for you to escape. But what I've learned lately is creativity is not benign. It metastasizes. This is from Brene Brown. And it metastasizes. If unused creativity metastasizes, it turns into anxiety, turns into depression, turns into stress. So when you're feeling anxious, fuck it, go for it. Create, write. Who cares?
Yes.
We're also fixated on like sharing our creations so much on social media. I'm guilty of that. Every time I make a beat that I think sounds good, I cannot help but post it. But really, who cares? Will they remember that 24 hours from now? No, but you will remember the next day you wake up because you're passionate about it. And that's what matters. It's you. Competing with yourself is you. And everything nowadays is so fast paced. You order something, next day it's at your doorstep. You're hungry, an hour from now it's at your doorstep. You don't even have to get up and lift a finger to cook.
Yeah.
But we're so used to everything being fast paced. But people always have to remember that, myself included with this as well, is that, yes, there's fast food, fast delivery, next day shipping. But no one in life has ever invented a fast destination to where your GPS really is. Even Elon Musk hasn't invented that. Yeah. He has billions of dollars, but really people pay attention to what his bank account is, but they don't only a handful pay attention to what his process really was. And those handful may not really even know what his process really was. There's certain things in life you just can't put into words. But that's why you can't pay attention to how someone got something. You can admire it, but you can't live in it. That's foolish. You can only admire what you live in and what you create for yourself. And I don't know, it's a complex world that you just have to understand your weaknesses, like a video game, right?
Exactly.
It's like me, I'm a big fan of NBA, so like it's like, how do you build up your character to be like, you have these cheat codes, make your creation like Dwayne Wade or like Allen Iverson. You can, but they're not. You just pick up those attributes. That's why you have inspirations. Don't let your inspiration be how your life is patterned. Let your inspiration, point blank, inspire how your life is. The problem nowadays with the influencer lifestyle, which I admire, I learned so many things from influencers on social media. But the problem is sometimes people forget that they're just meant to influence your life. You're not meant to live their lives.
Right.
You can't. No one can. But yeah.
Man, that's real. Like there's so much in that, you know what I mean? Like just going back to the competing with yourself in duality with being gentle with yourself. Like, I love competition, you know what I mean? Like it's a part of my life. But like, the competition can be friendly. Like you can be playing ball with your boy and be like, I got you, bro. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be so serious. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the more serious we take ourselves, I think the more suffering that we have. Like life can be light as you make it, as light as you take it. You know what I mean? And I think there is that dynamic there. And I do love what you said about NBA, like 2K. You know what I mean? Like this is something that I believe, like, just like in 2K, everyone starts with the same amount of points. And then you put those points in something. It just so happens in the video game of life, you don't get to choose what stats you get.
Yeah.
But I do believe we're all equal, but different and unique. Like we all have the same points coming on Earth. Like maybe you have like maxed out creativity, and then The Rock has maxed out buffness.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like, you're both equal.
Yeah.
You both have the same amount of points at the end of the day. And if we just embrace our own gifts, like really learn what our gifts are, becoming self-aware with who we really are, and then nurture those things instead of looking at the next guy and seeing how he's better than me, like then you can actually expand your gifts and give more to the world. And when you give, it just so happens you get more back.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like embrace yourself you can compete with yourself in a gentle way, and you can compete with your homies in a gentle way, but also know like you're a unique person and we're all equal but different.
Yeah.
You know? And like, yeah, like for me, I really vibe with what you said about like how everything on the internet now is so fast paced, and like, you know, even like I'll use music as an example. Like an album is dropped and people have an opinion on it instantly, and they're like, oh yeah, and then they probably move on like right away, and they're on to the next thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like just like everything, just like you said, everything's a double-edged sword. So like even for me, it's like, you know, because even on this podcast, man, I share myself vulnerably as well, and I'm blessed to talk to people who are willing to be vulnerable as well, you know. But like for me, it's like there's times before I post something where I'm like, shit, like, oh man, like I'm being vulnerable out here, like I'm scared. What are people gonna think? What are people gonna say? Oh my god. But then on the other side of the sword, it's like, well, no one's gonna remember this shit anyway. No one's gonna really care.
Yeah.
So let me share this for me, and maybe there's gonna be that 1 or 2 or 3 people who really resonate with this, who really fucking helps them. And then that to me is enough. You know what I mean? Like, let me put myself out there to help this 1, 2, or 3 people out of the hundreds of people who watch it and are like, yeah, whatever. I'm scrolling to the next thing instantly, and I already forgot about it half a second after I watched it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So allow that to like reduce our anxiety about life. Yeah. You know what I mean? And even anxiety, like this is something I heard on a podcast where like the chemicals going on inside your body when you're anxious are almost exactly the same, if not exactly the same as excitement. And so now it's just the way you're relating to this energy that's going on in your body. Yeah. Is like, oh man, like I'm excited. Let me get this energy out here. Let me do this. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, so many gems in there, and
it's addictive too, man. Like the same, I may botch this, but I listened to this podcast. I don't necessarily follow, but I picked some things up from it where it's like anxiety and depression have the same substances in it or chemicals in it that are addictive to someone who unfortunately battles those demons with alcohol and whatnot. And I think it's very true in my opinion, because going back to when I moved here 8-9 years ago, it was I was always almost every day in a fight or flight state, and I always tried to choose flight because, you know, when you fight, it gives you endorphins, but at the same time, those fight or flight, epinephrine, norepinephrine gives you, there's anxiety and stress there. Yes. Those two things always have anxiety and stress. And you live long enough in that life where you're worried every day, and that you're always negatively thinking of things just because the day is bad, that you think everything else is bad, that you get addicted to it. You get addicted to anxiety, and that's why people say, oh, I'm an overthinker. No one was born into this world already thinking of multiple things. 100%. When we were kids, we didn't even know what blocks were or what the color red or blue or green was. So no one was born an overthinker. You made yourself into an overthinker, and you have to take accountability into that. And by taking accountability, the times you catch yourself overthinking, you have to reel yourself in to be like, nope, that's not me right now. And, you know, you have to remember that these emotions we feel are just as addictive than a movie, a video game, or an experience in life, because an emotion is an experience. And yeah.
Man, that's real. Yeah, and I love that emphasis on accountability, man, because like whenever I feel anxious about something, it's because there's so many things out of my control. It's like, oh, what if this happens? Oh, what if that happens? So you can't control that, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But when you become accountable for the things that you can control, now you're in control. Yeah. You're like, oh, well, I can change the way I'm thinking about this. I can change the way I relate to this. And then now that anxiety is a little bit decreased because you're like, wait, these are the things I can control. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, yeah, those are powerful tools, man. And obviously it's hard. Like you said earlier, like all of this stuff we're saying here, like we're chilling here sitting about it and talking about it, you know, that's easy. But like to go and do that, it's hard. But like to me, it should never be an excuse. Oh, it's too hard. Yeah. So I'm just not going to even try. You know what I'm saying? And like, just like going back to that, like the hardships add color to life. Yeah. Makes it interesting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. Adversity, there's opportunity. It's just a matter of you finding out what the opportunity is. It may be music, may not be, but you can't sulk in what doesn't work for you. You just got to find out what works for you. What works for him may not be for you. You know, what works for her, what works for them may not be for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Like just going back to that, we're all unique gifts.
Yeah.
We all have our own journey to live in life. We're all in our own car. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
So you can drive that however you want. Like, I guess I'm going to shift it a little bit here, but still kind of on the note of adversity. Like, recently, obviously, Asian Canadians have kind of been bolstered by guys like Simu Liu, who's like freaking Shang-Chi and stuff. And Asian Americans or Canadians or, Anglo-speaking or born Asians have kind of been more highlighted in mainstream media these days. But, like, it's still a fairly new thing. Like, you don't see a whole lot of that. Like, there's still those set archetypes that you see, like, the nerd or the kung fu guy. Because Shang-Chi, like, he's kung fu.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But still, it's dope. You know what I mean? But, like, I'm just wondering if you could speak on, or if you would like to speak on, what has your experience been as an Asian MC? Like, do you feel like you meet a lot of resistance because of your background, or what has that experience been like for you?
That's a good question. I pondered on that a bit, but not too much, because sometimes you dwell on it. It's mainly really a topic of division. That's why I think before you dive into a topic, one thing that's really important is to really identify what the topic is and how you as a person stand on those certain topics, and to call yourself out on how you react to certain topics. In the beginning of the pandemic, when there was a lot of racial tension, and I was actively on social media still, actively posting and putting my opinions out there, I noticed that I was making sense. I was making good points, but it was delivered with the intent of getting followers to find my perspective. The reality with life is no one will think like you, no one will talk like you. And some people may agree on the tangent of your beliefs, but your beliefs are never going to be their beliefs. They believe in certain things on their own perspective, and people always say, oh yeah, we share the same perspective. No one really shares the same perspective. You share the same keywords, but you don't share the same interpretations of those perspectives. So looking at that, it's like, when I was in MC starting out, I got a lot of comparison to be like, oh yeah, you're like the Filipino Kendrick Lamar and stuff like that, which I embrace still.
Yeah.
I embrace it because that's one of my heroes. Him and J. Cole were like, and still are some of my heroes. And I don't know, in the beginning, I never really thought of it that way. I never really thought of, oh yeah, I'm Asian. Like, there's that pride because in the Philippines, everyone is so big to be like, oh, Manny Pacquiao, like a Filipino boxer.
Right.
When you're Filipino and you're doing something abroad, growing up where I came from, people always found that pride in labeling Filipino this and that, which is, I see the merit of it. But labels don't really necessarily add value. I think what really gives you value is what you create and how it impacts people. So, yeah, sometimes I see that. I think that, yeah, there's not a lot of this, not a lot of that. I get comparison to this. I get ridiculed for copying that and copying that. But that's just background noise, And sometimes it's hard not to ignore that background noise, especially if you have a personality, if you're very particular of where you're at. But I don't know. I think it's great. It's really great because even you said CBCQ. I got that show because of my friend Andrew Fung, who I greatly admire. Never really hung out with the dude, but we chat every now and then, and cool. I greatly admire him, and I'm glad that him and Simu are getting a lot of notoriety and really representing for culture. I don't know. I still don't really I dislike the topic of division because a friend once told me that this is something Morgan Freeman said, that if you talk about division, then you're part of the problem.
Yes.
I get the representation aspect of it, which is, I think, very important. But I think we have to look beyond the representation and actually see what that person is embodying. They may represent a certain culture, but beyond that, the culture adds to who they are as an artist and as a person. And I think we should try to delve down on the label and actually see the components.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Man, yes to all of that, bro. Like, honestly, I love that perspective. you know, like Bruce Lee. I got that skateboard up there because he's one of my heroes, man.
Yeah, like
actually,
water. Yeah.
Yeah, like and one of his most famous interviews, the interview asked him a similar question. He's like, "What's it like being the first Chinese superstar?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Man, under the sun there is but one family. Just humans. It just so happens we're all different, man. And we are all different. Like, just because, you know, you and I might look alike or we have a similar complexion doesn't mean our perspective in life is at all the same." You know what I mean? But I do appreciate how you kept that balance there with, like, you know, representation is important, because I do think about, like, that little kid at home that, like, looks like he's Asian. He doesn't have any role models on TV that look Asian, but, like, you're so right about that, man. When we focus on the things that separate us and make us different, it just creates more division. And I don't necessarily think that's good for society or for us or even as individuals of a certain race or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so I love that you have that perspective and that you're willing to share that, man, because...
No, I appreciate it, man. And it's like, it's also going to these articles would say Complex or the Calgary Herald or whichever medium you're using, Time Magazine, if say Simu is on Time Magazine or this magazine. Yes, the labels are Asian, are the first Asian Marvel superhero. And sometimes some people dive it's like, oh yeah, I don't like seeing that because it should be the first Asian Marvel hero. Like it should just be a new Marvel movie. But I'm like, in a society where we live in, where it's been generations, if not millennia, that labels have existed, you just got to live with it, but just be like, okay, well, let's read this, because yes, that's just the caption that catches your attention.
Right.
But somewhere in that article, these journalists they're very intelligent people that they, unfortunately, sometimes you just have to put the label to catch your attention. But this story within the interview shows about that person that, oh, Simu is like this or Simu is like that. Just a reference, I don't really know if there's, and I'm pretty sure Simu has a bunch of articles. But sometimes the label is just what captures your attention. But then if you read into the fine print and the details of it, you get to know what that person's about. So I guess my main point is just look over the label and see the content, right?
Yeah, I love that, man. I really love that perspective a lot. But yeah, I want to get more into you know, how you got started in music, man. Like I don't know. I read somewhere that you were introduced to music through church camp. Yeah. Well, but like, yeah, can you just tell me, you know, what was the initial catalyst for your love of music and how that unfolded for you?
For sure, man. I think it's also generational to have to embrace that aspect. I grew up around music. My dad always had like records, CDs. He was big into a mix of funk, soul, and folk. Like he loved James Taylor, but at the same time he loved the Bee Gees and he loved Earth, Wind, and Fire. And my grandfather, my mom's father, he was a banker, but then he would always play piano. He would play piano for Hyatt hotels in the Philippines. And I remember coming across this one picture where he had like, you know, a disco suit on and he had a little afro going on as well. And he had like a jazz band, I think. I don't really remember what the band is, but I remember looking at that picture when I was a kid. And that image still sticks in my head. I don't know if my parents remember that, but that image still sticks in my head. And I grew up Catholic. Right now, I do not practice that religion. I attend this church called Commons Church, which that's one thing too I've recently tapped into is faith. Faith is a tricky concept. I don't think, though, that it has to be dictated on if a person is good or not if they don't have faith, because some of the best people that have been a part of the process in my life don't even have faith, but it doesn't hurt to not be doing the right thing or be standing by your principles, right? I think faith just enhances things in your life that you believe in, and it enhances your capacity to, you know, get over those crossroads that I'm talking about. But church, when I was growing up, my mom would sing in the church choir and then my grandfather would play the keys. That honestly didn't really ignite anything in me when I was listening to it. I was just like, I thought it was cool, but I was just like meh about it. And then I took interest more in it. So the one thing I'm really grateful for my mom pushing me out to get out of the house and actually do something was one summer, I was just, you know, she was just like, So I'm half Filipino, half Chinese. And my dad would always enroll us after, regular quote unquote English school. In the afternoon we'd spend an hour and a half at Chinese school. And that Chinese school was a Christian, like they followed the Christian. A lot of the people there who attended that Chinese school, it was at this church. They followed the Christian religions, and we made friends there that my dad also knew from when he went to high school. He went to a Chinese school when he went to high school. And through those friends, they were talking to my mom. Oh yeah, Edward should attend our church camp. And I was like against it, and I was like, I just want to like play basketball in the summer. My thing every summer was I would attend basketball camp, and that's it. Yeah. And I would just chill for the rest of the summer. But then he was like, no, yeah, if you want to do this, you have to go there. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. And at the time, I was like big into, those bling blings were just in at the time, and the fitted caps, the multicolor fitted caps were in at the time, and I was all about that. I was 13 when I attended that church camp, and it was just I don't know. I always loved fashion and dressing up, and I was like, okay, the incentive for me was like, okay, I can look fly as a kid. As a teenager, you're wanting to delve into what you see on TV, what you see. My parents always got me when we'd go to the grocery store, like the Source magazine. That's where it would inspire me, seeing these rappers as a kid. And then I went to church. And then when I went there in that camp, I didn't know what it was. And then what attracted me at first, being 13, is like, oh, I didn't know this camp had a lot of like cute girls here and stuff like that. And I just thought it was just like some sort of summer camp. And then they had a routine where they would like do, peer groups, and there's games, then there's sports. I enjoyed the sports a lot, and I enjoyed the music at the end of the day, every day a lot. That I was just like, hey, this isn't hip hop, but this really speaks to me. I want to know how to play those things. Because the thing with me is, the one thing I learned about going off the grid too and stopping Lyrique was people don't really know you, Yeah. I see people, and that's okay, because I always kept certain things private. But that's why recreating a new Instagram and just having certain people there are those people to actually connect with, because not everyone knows you. Like when I stopped Lyrique and things started opening up, I went to different shows. They were just like, oh, why aren't you doing music anymore? Why aren't you rapping anymore? And I'm just like, rapping that's just a part of me.
Yeah.
And I grew up liking hip hop, rock, and different genres. Hip hop has been my go-to. Hip hop R&B has been my go-to. That's my number one. But I appreciate different forms of music. Folk, I appreciate country. Even I appreciate different forms of music. And going to church, I was just like, back home they would always label you that, oh, if you're wearing chains, if you're wearing a hat like that or jerseys, you're the hip hop guy. You can't play bass. You can't play guitar. And I'm like, right. But I think I can. I want to. Like as a kid, that's why I dove into production now. Mainly because I was also inspired by, and I always was particular. One thing that I get asked is when I was rapping before, it's like, oh, how do you select your beats? How do you do this? Because I'm very particular with the things I like with beats. So that's what drove me into production. But honestly, what drove me into production was my history as a kid of wanting to play instruments. Because you can't really produce unless you know how to play an instrument. And it's good. It's good for you. It's good for your brain. It's good for... It benefits you in so many ways. But yeah, going to church, I was just like, hey, I got connected spiritually in something. I got connected. I invested a lot into learning an instrument, from drums to guitar to bass. And then I just grew on that. Unfortunately, I had to not attend that church as much because, like I said with the bird reference earlier, people will be people. Sometimes they would fly away and shit on you. And that's okay. Yeah. You just got to figure it out, right? Can't hold on to that. But yeah, church is what really ignited me to learn instruments. And before I was rapping, I used to play in a band. I used to play bass for a band. Bass was my first instrument. I never really rapped. I was a fan of rap, low key. I would rap in my dad's car and he'd drop me off at school. I would rap in the shower. but I'd never really rapped in front of anyone before.
Right.
I played bass for a band that was playing alternative rock. I played bass for a band that was playing funk. I played bass for a Red Hot Chili Peppers cover band.
That's dope.
And that was my thing. And then going into college, there was a studio back home called Sound Jive. They were a jamming rehearsal space. And then the guy who always watched the shop, his name was Jethro. And he was a chill dude, man. It was always fun hanging out with him. He was a great bass player, so I was always hang out with him and talk to him about my inspirations at the time. And then what inspired me was he one day played Graduation by Kanye, and I was just like, yeah, this is the guy I'm looking for. Not just all these guys who, if you play guitar or bass, that you're supposed to be this rocker dude who does these solos. And you're listening to it, and then he inspired me to, yeah, man, you know, bass and drum, it's for everywhere and anything. And then afterwards, he was just like, yeah, let's tap into doing this. And one time he just reached out to me. The very first time rapping was, he called me and he said, I have this project. It's called Skydive Academy. It's like Wu-Tang Clan mixed with this, with a band. And there's like a horn section and everything. And like, you know, the old people that used to hang out there at the studio, it's like, yeah, so this guy's going to play this guy's going to play that. So it's like, wow, all these talented people I didn't know played this genre. And I was like, so what do you want me to do? I can play bass for that. No, I want you to rap with me in it. It's like, I don't know, man. Come on, man. Listen to Lupe Fiasco. Listen to Kanye. Listen to all that. So just give it a try. Gave it a rehearsal, and then we did like our original songs on the spot with everyone just playing. We just orchestrated the horns like, I want you to do this. I want you to play drums like this. I want you to play drums like that. So I guess from church to that rehearsal studio that I was doing, that I would hang out at during my break times in the university, those processes were what helped me really have a love and passion for music and creating.
Man, I love that. That gives me so much context into who you are as an artist, and that's really dope, man. Like, because I was wondering, I was like, man, where'd you pick up all these instruments at, bro? Because you play everything, man, and that's amazing.
Thank you.
And I really do love that aspect that you touched on earlier in that answer, which is like, you know, faith and how that's been incorporated into your life.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think that's important because, you know, we spoke earlier about accountability and how that gives us control. But for everything outside our control, you have to have faith.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's dope, you know? And even like going back to, you know, we never know what the chain of events are going to lead to. Like literally who you are today is so much influenced by like your dad being like, hey, you got to go to church or you got to go to this Chinese school or whatever that was. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, so man, embrace life, embrace these things because you never know where it might lead you, right? Exactly. And
and even the opportunities I got here, one thing just turned on another. Like you never know who's in the room, right? That's why you always have to, that's why they say always put your ego in check, because you never know who's in the room, what connection you may make in the room. Yeah, you got to always try to kill it your best in your performance, but don't always act like a superstar, you know? No. Like in life, you're always the opening act, you know? You're always the opening act. And yeah, it's just one thing always, like you said, one thing leads to another that you don't realize where it may lead to. You just got to follow it and go with the flow.
100%. Yeah, like another thing you said in there was about like, you know, you were like always this shy guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like a bedroom rapper or like whatever, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so, you know, how do you go from like that shy guy who doesn't have the confidence to like share his music into like this guy who performs at K-Day's music festival in front of like 7,000 people?
That's the best experience I've had.
Yeah,
thanks
like,
for bringing that up.
Yeah. How do you get from there to there, man? For the other guy who's that, this is a shy guy in his room right now rapping with his homies in his car or something. Like how did you do that?
You know what? To be honest with you, I still don't know. I honestly still don't know. I still don't know, and I'm really blessed to have experienced that aspect. And also going back into faith, it's a tricky concept. Like the last year and a half, I've just recently gone back into connecting with my faith, but prior to that, I was like really lost with it. And I don't want to shove faith down people's throats, but I just want to encourage that if you believe in something or if something makes you feel good and feel right positively, follow it, and you never know what it may do for you. At the end of the day, it's what it does for you, not what it does for the person with you, right?
Right.
Because you're always with yourself. But like going back to K-Days, I don't really know. Like I just applied for something on Alberta Music. Just sent a bunch of I think persistence really helped that, because I'm a very awkward guy, and I know that after a performance I'm just the type to just like stand in the corner. I don't really dance and stuff like that. Like I try to vibe and have fun nowadays, but this is just who I am.
Yeah.
And I just have to, that's something I'm still going to have to learn to tap out of, to just, be yourself, dance and groove along. I've always been self-conscious, and I think it's just something I have to learn to I'm still learning that, and I will, and I may not, but that's okay. I don't know that right now. But like, I've always been that guy who's finished the set, but it would just go on the side.
Yeah.
That's always been me. But yeah, I think persistence really is the key, which is something I've yet to tap back into. Not gonna lie, when I gave up Lyrique and all that, I lost a certain amount of persistence in music, but not in life. I've just gotten that aspect of persistence and added it to a different attribute in life, because life is not just all about that. Not all about chasing your passion. Sometimes you have to prioritize. That's one other tricky thing too. But yeah, persistence. Like I watched this movie of Will Smith recently, King Richard, and that guy is persistent. And even watching The Founder, the movie about I think it was Michael Douglas who was in it, who founded McDonald's.
Okay, cool.
And it's persistence. He never really owned McDonald's. He never invented it. He just saw a drive-through, and these people were just like, oh, they were in a small town, and he saw a vision with it. And he was 45. He was in his 50s. Then he said franchising, and he owned the land and stuff like that. And he persisted for them to sell him the rights, and now him and his family are making billions every day from a cheeseburger or something. And even Venus and Serena Williams from Compton to like being some of the best, if not the greatest tennis players ever in that game. And it's their father believed in it enough in the process. So that's persistence. I think if you're persistent in a process, there's bound to be something, there's bound to be a reward. The problem with persistence is persistence never makes pals. It's very rare that persistence makes pals, but persistence would always give you results. And you just have to, it's like in a crossroad, you have to be willing to accept that certain persistence, and the persistence that really truly benefits you will not have someone who was with you before. And yeah, man, like when I did K-Days, I wasn't with people who I started with rapping. I wish it was, but that's not how it was written.
Right.
But K-Days I'm really grateful for that. I just applied on Alberta Music, and they're a great resource for any artist who's starting in Alberta per se, not just Calgary. Just apply for whatever. The worst thing that could happen is a no, right? But you can't always look at things as a no. It may be not for you, not right now, and you just have to accept it. And yeah, man. Still one of the best memories I've had, and I'm grateful that I was able to share it with people who are very close to me in my circle, like DJ Seasick, my friend Mayoa, my friend K Riz, who are like really my non-biological brothers in this world.
Those guys are like local legends. They do a lot in the city.
Yeah, like they're really. I'm grateful that I was able to share those things with them, that experience. Yeah,
that's dope, man. Like, I love that. Just shoot your shot, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just shoot your shot. Like, it happened just from applying to this thing, you know what I'm saying? And like you said, the worst thing that can happen is you end up in the exact same place you're in right now, which is not performing at K-Days. You know what I'm saying?
And even like not performing, like Sled Island, one thing that I persisted with was when I first started out, I didn't even know these festivals. I only knew of like, okay, there's shows here.
Right.
I started out in Calgary by open mics at Cafe Koi.
Yeah.
On my own. I never really had friends then. And that's just how I wanted to roll. Even sometimes that's how I still want to roll.
Yeah, that's dope.
But yeah, I didn't know that there was this festival called Sled Island. I worked hard on my music, and the very first time I applied, it was a no. And And it's just like, okay. But then after that, I'm blessed to say I never missed a Sled Island since. So it was like on back to back until the pandemic. And then this year, I tried to apply as apartment 8 with me, Eris, and Mayoa, but we didn't get it. But it's okay. You know, it's just like you're back to square one. It was just an eye opener for me that you're back to square one. But you've been here before. You know,
100%.
There's certain processes that you're just smiling like, oh, I've been here before, and I know what's about to happen next. It's just a matter of taking a different route this time. Yeah.
It's just traffic, right?
Yeah.
It's just traffic. Like you said, it goes back to that persistence. And I really love that you balance that out with like, well, it's, you know, persistence and productivity isn't always the most important thing though.
Yeah.
Like you do have to balance those things out because like I said, I believe that we're souls just having a human experience here. Like it's temporary. Yeah. And like you said, the time that we're here is not promised. And so like, what's the point of it? Even if you have all these accolades or things that you wanted through your productivity or your persistence, like what's the point of it if you don't enjoy it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, I heard this one thing where this guy said like, what's the meaning of life? And it's like enjoying the passage of time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how are you enjoying your life? You got to enjoy it, man. So it's not all about persistence, but it's definitely important, you know?
Yeah.
And you mentioned apartment 8, which I want to know more about, man. Like,
yeah.
You know, typically it's like, you know, you're a group and then you go solo, but you're like solo and then now you're going to a group. So like, you know, tell me more about how you guys all came together and, you know, what you guys are all about.
Yeah, man. Like there really is no I in team. I've worked with a lot of people coming into music from when I was doing my solo thing, which these people I'm very grateful for. I've learned things that necessary to my growth from these people that have helped me in the past with my journey as Lyrique. Like shout outs to Shane, shout outs to DJ Roxwell. They've helped me a lot when I was doing Lyrique. And then when I went to the point where I was just giving up Lyrique to do something else. In life, I think this is one thing that was really importantly taught to me is there's no I in team. When I was doing Lyrique, I was kind of doing a lot of the marketing thing and promoting thing on my own, and that takes a toll on you. I would do the graphic art promotion stuff myself. Then I found people to help me with certain things, but sometimes you can't help but be hands-on.
Right.
And I guess apartment 8 was just, that's where that's what I was telling you, I was living in Bridgeland a while back. That's the apartment unit where it was at. Dope. And I was roommates with Mayoa at first. It just so happened Eris was living upstairs from us. So this was actually, funny enough, you mentioned K-Days because this was the K-Days timeline. We had so much music then that we would write. I love writing for people. I'm not the best singer. Like I could hold a note, but I'm not the best singer. But I like writing melodies for other people. And like I enjoy co-writing with people and just creating, especially if I connect with those people. Not everyone. But, you know, there's certain people you create with that you just enjoy. And we've had so much music then with Apartment 8 that makes me wonder sometimes. I think of what if I just drop Lyrique, then I just hit Apartment 8, then what now? But nah, I can't think like that. I'm here now. What matters is now, you know? So I catch myself in those times. But, yeah, we were just like people having fun, bonded in and out of music. At the time, I was still having a very toxic headspace where I only thought of myself. And then afterwards, I was just like, let's go back home. Let's do Apartment 8. We just hung out again. And then we were like, let's do it. And these people, Eris and Mayoa, they're literally like Mayoa, Carriage, they're my inner circle. They're like my brother, my non-biological brothers, really. Like they're my brother from another mother, if there's, for lack of a better term. Like, we connect in and out of music. Without music, we're okay. With music, we're on cloud 9. But without that, we're still okay. We're still good. And I'm just blessed that we're able to connect and create vibes and try to make something again out of nothing. You know, it was just like, really, we were just making music off our living room. And when I moved out, Eris took over my spot at Apartment 8. And I would come back when I'm already living at a different place, and I would come back, and they're already out of Apartment 8. But every time we catch up with each other, we're just always like, "Man, remember Bridgeland? Remember Apartment? These memories?" And we're just like, Yeah, man. Let's call it Apartment 8. Let's
That's
do
dope.
something in Apartment 8. That's how it came about.
I love that. I love that, man. I love the backstories and little things like that. That's awesome, man. And it's cool how like most things in life just happen when you're having fun, man.
Yeah.
Again, like going back to just enjoying the passage of time, like have fun with it, and some great things can happen, right? Like you mentioned something about like, you like to, write for other people, and you like to collaborate with other people in terms of music. Like what's something that you look for in somebody that you want to produce for, or that you want to work with? Like what does that artist have to have for you to be like, yeah, let's get on a song together, let's work?
That's a great question, and that's something I'm still trying to figure out. One thing is for sure connection. I find a connection in someone besides talent is really important, because if you only base everything off talent, then you're only working for one result. Whereas if you can work with connection with talent, it's longevity, because you create a relationship, not just a transaction.
Yeah.
So I'm working slowly now with several artists I really admire in the city, and these people I've been connected with not just on a musical level but on a personal level, where I've shared conversations with them. And that's one thing I find too. And there's really I'm just a fan. That's one thing I lost track of when I was Lyrique. Or when I was doing that whole ordeal in the beginning of Lyrique. There's one day I backtracked on the old posts about Lyrique and stuff like that, or all old conversations. And the one thing I lost in that was support. I was a big supporter in local music, and then when I was getting notoriety, I felt like I was entitled to be the top dog. But you can't think like that. That's bound to self-sabotage you. So I want to work with people who I'm fans of, but then again, I'm at a headspace where I'm not afraid to not really call someone out, but say that this doesn't work for me. Like, say example, there's just one artist who's super talented. I really would love to work with him, but he's impatient. He keeps bugging me when I'm gonna send the beat, and I just had to be upfront. And this was one thing I'm still working on. Sometimes I have a difficulty being upfront, but
Right.
No one will tell you that except yourself. You gotta be accountable for that. So I just told him that, hey man, this is not how I work. I like taking my time. When I'm ready, I will give it to you. And when I'm ready, I'm going to, and that leads it to what I say transactional instead of relationship.
Right.
Because I'm like, I also try to understand that maybe he's in that headspace where he's not yet at that level to be understanding, or he's just really hungry. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm willing to work with you for free on my own time, and we'll just talk about transaction later. But since you are trying to be difficult, then your mindset right now is wanting to create just for the sake of being in the conversation, then this is going to be a transactional relationship that I may have to just not invest in you, but you invest in me for my time. So I really have to differentiate those things that, I don't know, if I don't want to work with you, I'm just going to say it up front. And if I'm wanting to work with you, we'll find out if we can hang out, because time is currency you can never gain back. And I'd rather use my time with someone who the music may not be there, but the relationship is there. Because really, Mac Miller even said it, what the fuck are memories if all we got is time?
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yeah, man. Like, honestly, no matter what the outcome might be from working with somebody, I think you have to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And whatever that might be, like, and some people just aren't compatible with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that's really great insight for people. And I hear that a lot from people, right? It's like not even necessarily a sound or a certain tangible thing that you can say, I want to work with this person. It's kind of like a vibe. Do we vibe together? Is our chemistry good? Like, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's dope, man. Like, I guess that kind of brings me to my next question, which is kind of like, I think one thing that really limits people in their own is their own concept of success. So, like, I'm curious for you these days, especially with all of this growth you're going through, in terms of how you see your music. Like, how do you define success for yourself? Like, how do you know if a song is successful, or a project is successful, or an album? Like, what does that process look like for you?
Two things with that. It's you can't help but not think of numbers and figures, because that's the culture that's built around right now, where if you have, with all these streaming services, if you have 1 million streams, you're considered successful on screen. But behind it, there's really, you don't really have ownership. Ownership is a big thing of it. And that's also why I went into self-production. I used to just lease beats and buy beats that someone could possibly across the world have the same beat on, and I own the lyrics and I own the experience of it, but I don't really own and squat with it.
Right.
And that's why just making your own sound is ownership with it. And I think success is, everyone has their different definition of success. But I think for me, in terms of music, you have to be at peace that there's thousands, if not millions, of music being released every day from different continents, different parts of the world, different time zones of the world. And that's okay. Those people are just like you, trying to put themselves out there regardless of what their intent is. You can't focus on that. You got to focus on you. And you got to set your standards of success. If you're really, and you got to write your intent about that on, like, if your intent really is to be the next Drake or Jack Harlow or be that big mainstream, do it. Just know just understand what it takes to take that route and how it's really going to be very lonely before all those pay off. Because one thing I'm doing right now too is I'm trying to write a book. To be honest, just a concept that came out last night on, like, you can't pretend to live other people's lives, because on paper, on Instagram, Drake and them are like, oh man, big house, big this, big that. Do you really know the lawsuits or whatever he's dealing with? Right. Not necessarily lawsuits. I could imagine like what you have to deal with if you're that public. But for me, my term of success now for music is, if someone I legitimately respect vibes with it, that's a win for me. If someone was able, music is a soundtrack to someone's life, instrumental or with vocals. And if that person was able to tap into a memory or a feeling in their life or impart something with them, that's a win for me. It gives someone peace, that's a win for me. If it gives someone vibes, that's a win for me. Anything else is a bonus now. I used to fixate on wanting 1 million streams, but really that's just a number, you know? That number will be outdone 10 years from now by someone 10 years younger than you. And you will grow up and you will grow old naive, thinking that you achieved something, but then someone can achieve again 10 years down the road.
Right. So
for me, success is really creating a vibe. And as to what that vibe is, it has to be in alignment with your principle. So that's what success is for me.
I love that perspective, man, because, yeah, like, obviously, like you said, we live in a world of numbers where you just want to see a big number, some arbitrary number. Sometimes people pick 1,000, sometimes people pick 1 million, you know what I'm saying? But for me, it's similar. Success is impact. Whether that's somebody vibing with your shit that you respect, or like touching somebody or saying like, hey man, I relate to that song, dude. Like, I listen to that song when I'm like sad or whatever. Like, I appreciate you making that. So impact and on someone's life. That's the real success, man.
Yeah.
And that's dope that we share that perspective, you know. You mentioned ownership, you know, and that's interesting because, you know, people like Russ and stuff like that, they're completely independent artists, you know what I'm saying? So like, for you, are you looking to sign to a label? Is that like a goal of yours? Is that a part of success? Or would you rather stay an independent artist and have that ownership over your work?
That's a good question. I don't know that yet, because with me, sometimes I'm lazy on like looking at the fine prints, but I'm blessed enough to have people around me to help me out with certain things. One person in particular that I wanted to mention on that is Iman Safadi. She's a Cartel Madra's manager. She's an amazing manager, and she's when there's things that I don't understand, especially in this new journey as Eddie Pesos and as a creator in general right now, I guess she would be one of the first people I would ask with regard to do things in formality. And I'm really grateful for her time and insight always. And in terms of going to being signed or unsigned, I truthfully don't know. Unless that person who's signing me is a hero of mine, like say J. Cole or Kendrick said, hey man, I want to sign you to this. Right. It's an automatic yes. Because those are people who, then again, so why am I a fan of J. Cole and Kendrick? Because they're cool, yes, but because their music impacted my life. And that's already a win for me. Whereas if you're going to say, oh, Universal wants to sign you. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, Universal has, like, say, Cardi B or whoever in it. Big name, I don't really know him. They make an impact in my life. So I'll sign with someone if they had an impact on who I am today. But if I can make things independent and have ownership in it and have the bonus of being able to feed my family and provide for myself with that, if I can figure out how to do that, that's even better. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. Like you said, like Russ, like even Kendrick right now on the route he's taking from TDE to PG Lang. So ownership was never easy, but ownership is just like accountability. It's never easy. You just got to do it.
100%. Man, I could sit here and talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but I know you got things to do here. So, I just wanna give you a chance to talk about any projects that you're working on. Like, what do you have coming up for us to kind of look at, or maybe you don't even want that. Maybe you want to keep your privacy and peace or whatever. But
it's all good. It's all good. Honestly, I have like a lot of music right now that I just don't really know how to release. I don't have that mindset right now that I used to. And maybe I don't know. Sometimes it frustrates me, but sometimes I'm just like, well, this is just not you right now. Right now you're on this tangent in your life. But I want to dive more into like production. Been scoring certain things for some really from people that I really respect in the city. I don't want to mention who right now. It'll come when the time is right.
Awesome.
But that's one thing I've been really excited on is scoring music for this one project of these individuals I really respect and I've been a fan of even before Lyrique. And I guess the other thing is really writing. Like, truthfully, I just had this concept last night that just hit me in 1 a.m. and I rarely have those now. That it gave me this story that I wanted to write, and now I just have to figure out how to write it. And if it happens, it will happen. But now I just have to write it. I have all these ideas, and that's one thing too. Like you said, like embracing your inner child is when I was a kid, 2nd grade to be particular. I have a very vivid memory. It's a blessing and a curse, to be honest. But when I was in 2nd grade, my mom would get these like folders, and she would like hole punch them and put fasteners in them and put paper in it. And I would like, I'm a big fan of the supernatural, like, I like paranormal stuff. And I would like write ghost stories as a kid in 2nd grade. And then my one classmate at the time, Melva, she would like, after a week, she came in with her own fastener and was writing stories, and we would like exchange. And I gave up on that. I didn't tap back into that. And then now it's like, what's stopping you from tapping back into that? So I want to tap into writing again, because rapping is just like writing a book, only it's 3 minutes long, 4 to 5 minutes long. But I like storytelling, and I really like stories with meaning and impact. And I guess that's one thing I want to tap into is writing more, not just musically, but contextually. And if I can make a book, great. If that book this doesn't fit a book and it becomes a script, I'll bring it to some people's attention, and we'll see afterwards. But right now, where I'm at is the process of writing. So yeah,
man, that's dope. And like, just as a follower and admirer of your work, man, I know that whatever you put your creative energy into, it'll be impactful. It'll have a message behind it. It'll be awesome, man. So I look forward to everything that you're working on, and hopefully that I can help you kind of bring that out there and get people to.
I'd love that
to hear it or see it or read it, whatever that medium, because you're multidisciplinary, like in every way, man. So,
no, thank you, man.
I appreciate you spending the time today, man. But I just want to get one more thing out of you.
Yeah, for sure. No, go. And all I have to say is, like, honestly, man, like without these cameras and not this being on record, like really big ups to you. Like, the truth is, I've yet to listen to a full episode of your podcast, but that goes without saying that I see your vision. Not necessarily see your vision. It's your vision. You're the only one who knows where it can go. But I admire it, is what I want to say. It's because like when I first saw it from Jared, and then I started looking at your other content, you're about it, and you're believing in a concept and investing in it. And no, man, thanks for having me. Like, as much as you're grateful for me having here, I'm really happy to be here and spend time with you. And I'm grateful that I'm in this podcast of yours, and not just my episode. I hope that whoever is listening or watching this will continue to support it as it grows, because it's really like I'm really comfortable right now, and I'm really, sometimes I always have to catch myself when I speak, but now I feel vulnerable and I feel open and I feel at peace with it. And I think people should check it out and really support you, because what I see here right now, and it's hard to probably contextualize that off the other screen of whoever's going to watch this, is it's an investment, and there's nothing better than investing in yourself. So congratulations in advance, man.
Man, I appreciate that so much, bro. That means a lot to me, especially coming from you, like someone I admire a lot. So thank you so much for saying that, man. I appreciate that wholeheartedly. And maybe we could just end off this episode with, like, you know, just giving a little piece of advice, dropping some knowledge for, like I said, that kid who's just like you in his bedroom right now, that's too afraid to pursue his dreams.
Man, like, when I get asked questions like that, how I look at it is like, I just travel back in time and I talk to myself. What would I say to myself 10 years ago? And what I would just say is, there are going to be times you're going to get challenged. And more often than not, you think everyone is against you, but it's just really you against you. And you have to call yourself out on that when not everyone is against you. People are entitled to feel a certain way. An action always has a reaction. That's why it's a reaction. It's a reply to an action. And you can't dwell on how people react to what you do with your art or with what decisions you make in life. It's okay to also feel upset about certain reactions, but you can't live in that reaction. You have to live in action, and by living in action is living in accountability. So whatever you do, whatever you choose to do, you have to be accountable for it. And there are going to be moments in life that you are going to make decisions that 5-10 years from now you wish you didn't do. But come that time, you just have to be accountable for that decision in this moment. And 10 years down the road, you can't live in that. That's all in the rear view. Like, you just got to, like, focus on what's ahead of you. You can't keep looking back, because life wasn't built for... Try walking looking back for an hour. You're going to get a stiff neck, going to get pain. There's nothing but pain in looking back.
100%.
But you're more aware. Awareness, there's more peace in awareness. And you have to... I just wish for everyone to learn the benefits and the contradictions their ego causes in themselves more often and call that out, because there's no peace in living with ego. And don't ignore the red flags. When you see red flags in a certain relationship, in a certain creation, in a certain job or anything, don't ignore the red flags. It's okay to not be okay in a certain situation. But like I said, don't live in reaction, live in action. A reaction is an emotional response, where an action is moving in wisdom. And it's always wisdom over emotion. That's one thing I've been learning. So, yeah.
Man, I love that so much, bro. Like, that's perfect.
Thank you, man.
Man, where can people find you if they want to connect with you, bro?
Honestly, man, right now, like, I have my Instagram up and my Twitter. That's about it. Instagram, it's a private account. But, you know, if I think we can connect, and if I've connected with you before, I'll accept it. That's the truth. It's not being snobbish or anything, but protecting your energy too. Going back to if I were to say something to someone, I know it's, people always say, oh yeah, it's a spiritual thing, your energy. It's a real thing. That's why sometimes you're so drained by being with someone you're not meant to be with. So you got to protect that energy, because that energy can be used for something else, and that energy should always be used for yourself. It's not being selfish. It's about growth. Because you can't grow another person. You have to, like, protecting your energy is like seeing who you water and what you water. And yeah, like, they can follow me on Instagram, maybe, if not Twitter. If not, honestly, I'd rather connect with people in person.
100%.
I'm trying to take a break from social media, and that one book I wanted to write is kind of contextualized to that. It's not like a self-help book. It's not a biography or anything. It's more of like a storybook. But it's just like, you know, social media is great for promotion of businesses and content if you're a business-minded person. But if it's something to compare yourself to, say, The Rock's life or not, those people have, it's always new levels, new devils. Those people probably have their own devils that they don't advertise or they're not vulnerable about. It's because that's not what their business is about. And their demons are probably something you can never handle. That's why they're at that level, right? So, yeah, I'd rather connect with people in person. Like, honestly, if you see me on Twitter, want to hang out, if I feel it's right, we'll hang out. I'd rather a personal connection, because everything is, I don't know. I'd rather something real.
Man, I feel that, and I appreciate you coming here in person today, bro.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much, man, and
Thank you, man.
yeah.